and then a couple of
The issue is with both.
I know, close my door. For once. Okay, I think we're good. Do you want to should we get started now, Emmanuel?
Yeah, we can.
Okay, I'll start off and kick off and then hand it over to you. Have you, sure, I'm not seeing your presentation, but that's probably what you wanted, right?
Yeah, so I'm sharing the presentation now.
Okay, perfect. Good morning, everyone. Crystal, can you hear me okay? Is everything okay?
Yep, you're good.
Okay, excellent. First of all, thank you very much for joining us. This is a nice Friday, end of the week, a bit of good advice and good energy to go into your weekend and how you'll start next week thinking about writing some proposals for grant money from Alberta Innovates and Emissions Reduction Alberta. We're very lucky to have Emanuela Cienduca from Alberta Innovates joining us to give us a presentation on how to write a great grant proposal. And I think most programs are fairly similar in what they're looking for. They're looking for a good project with good innovation, a good company, a good team, knowing your business, knowing your market, knowing your customers. But I do find that we've been in this for Decentralized Energy Canada has been around for 20 plus years, helping people access funding through different programs, federal, provincial, and they all have a unique something. They all have something that you don't expect. Some people like to see jobs, how many jobs are you creating, how much revenue you're creating. Others like to see how much emissions are you offsetting, or how much diversification are you hiring in your staff, and that sort of thing. So this will be a good run through on what Alberta Innovates and Emissions Reduction Alberta look for when you're applying for grants from them. I would say one thing, housekeeping, if you can keep your microphone muted, that would help us out so that we don't get any feedback or any competing sounds going on. So if you don't see the red with the line through, you need to mute your microphone. So I see a few of you have unmuted yourself. So if you can mute yourself, that would be great. Crystal can go through and mute you if you don't know how to do that. Yeah, so what I'll do is Emmanuel's got this presentation, her background. So again, we're very lucky because she has a technical background in bioresearch. So she comes to us with a lot of science and research and technology based experience. She's a business partner on behalf of Alberta Innovates for Emissions Reduction Alberta. So she's coordinating the partnership intake program for ERA. So she's got great experience, great understanding of what they're looking for in these applications. We will take questions at the end through the chat. So if you have a question, you feel free to put your question anytime throughout the presentation, and we'll answer them at the end. And yeah, Decentralized Energy Canada welcomes you and thanks you very much for joining us. And of course, we are focused on decentralized energy projects. So microgrids, nanogrids, energy storage, renewable energy. But of course, what Emmanuel is presenting today is relevant for anybody, regardless of what sector you're in. So with all that said and done, Emmanuela, I will hand it over to you.
Okay, thank you very much. Anouk, that was a really nice introduction. So I don't know if you saw me fumbling with my settings. I was just trying to see how to share multiple screens. Sorry, not share, if I could share multiple screens depending on when I needed it, but I guess Zoom is not that advanced yet. But anyways, thank you all for joining the call this morning. I am Emanuela, like Anouk mentioned. I'm a business partner with Alberta Innovates, who is also seconded to Emissions Reductions Alberta. And today we're going to be talking about how to write a good proposal. And before I go into all of the fun stuff, I want to acknowledge that I am in my work as in Alberta Innovates, I happen to come to you from Edmonton, where I live, as a guest on the traditional lands of Treaty 6 and the Métis Nation of Alberta. And so quickly, I'd like to give a brief overview of Alberta Innovates. We were created as a provincial corporation under the Ministry of Technology and Innovation, and were created under the Alberta Research and Innovation Act to support research and innovation activities, including those that are directed at discovery, commercialization, and application of knowledge. And as Alberta's innovation engine, we firmly believe that innovation is key to growing the economy, expanding market, and creating new and better opportunities for each and every Albertan. We also serve entrepreneurs, businesses, and researchers at any point, from discovery through applied testing and validation. And so in order to fully do that, we have different lines of services that we work through. And of note is our subsidiaries. The first of our subsidiary is Innotech Alberta, which is a leading research and technology organization that serves the needs of entrepreneurs, industry, and the public sector, ensuring that they have broader access to infrastructure, because that is what is most times required for startup and scale up, and also operational innovation, just that first place where they can test their ideas and their innovation. Our second subsidiary is also CIFA Technologies, which applies engineering services and testing to advance safety, efficiency, and environmental performance in partnership with the energy industry. They also help end users find the best available technologies and validate the performance of these technologies in independent full-scale or field tests. And finally, they also provide bridging services by working with industries to develop new technical standards to ensure the safe, reliable, and efficient implementation of new technologies. Through these subsidiaries and also our other arms, we help make technical expertise, funding, network, applied research and engineering capability, and facilities publicly accessible to help de-risk technologies, stimulate startup, and draw funding and investment to Alberta. Myself, I work with the Clean Resource Group, and in our Clean Resource Group, our portfolio covers energy, clean technology, environment, agri-food, you name it. And some of our programs are things that you might have heard before, like the bitumen beyond combustion, the Hydrogen Center of Excellence, and the CCUS, to mention but a few. Flipping my hat to the other organization, Emissions Reduction Alberta, our mandate really is to reduce GHG emissions and grow Alberta economy by accelerating the development and adoptions of innovative technologies. And so we were created in 2009 to help deliver on the province's environmental and economic goals. And we have invested the proceeds from the carbon pricing on large final emitters to achieve this mandate. Through our investments, we improve the competitiveness of existing industries by lowering costs and improving our environmental performance, and also creating opportunities for new businesses and economic growth. Our guiding document is our technology roadmap, which serves as a catalyst for our technology and solution investments. It's all encompassing in terms of sectors that are in Alberta and guides our investments. It's a document that we frequently review and update so that we can meet the changing needs of the province and react swiftly as new demands come in. So currently in our current technology roadmap, we've identified 5 areas of interest and strategic areas of focus, and they are future fuels, circular economy, energy efficiency, industrial transformation, and carbon sequestration. So why it's very important, why I put this figure, because it's also important that in getting technologies from ideation to pilot, scale up, and ultimately commercialization deployment, it's very important to know the stage of technology that different organizations are operating at, because this can help you know where to focus your efforts and how to tailor your application to fit that innovation level. And also, in addition to that, there's also a need for strong linkages and interconnection between these different industries. And so this graph just shows where the different organization lies in that innovation spectrum. And as you can see from the figure, you see where ERA and AI operate and how we differ from each other. And we'll go into that a little bit more as we go, as we further along in the conversation. And so, today, which is, I think this is the part you're all waiting for, how to write a good proposal. And so I'm just going, the following slides, I'll be going over some tips on that. And the first tip one that we give is something that appears very obvious or very common, but it's for people to actually read guidelines and templates. And so the evaluation team has already set out a specific criteria that they're looking for prior to launching a call. And that criteria that criteria is what they will use to evaluate the applications. So the guideline and the application template have already been designed to collect information that would be needed to help assess the application. And so when creating your application, it's very important to go through the guidelines, as it would help you know what the reviewers are looking for, what the funding criteria are, and it goes beyond just the basic eligibility requirements, because eligibility requirements just means that you can apply. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have a strong proposal. So once you know that you are eligible and you can apply, it's very helpful to make sure you understand the intent and the goal of the funding organization and that particular call, so that you can help project your, you can help emphasize how your project excel in moving that goal forward. And also one last thing before I go out of this slide, is very also helpful, because most templates have prompts and bullets which the organizers have put in to help guide the conversation. And so it's just going through this and tailoring your applications to answer those prompts also would be helpful for a good proposal. The second is, do your research. Know the market you want to operate in, know the risk around the market, know your competitors, know the potential hurdle. When you present an application that is devoid of competitors, either direct or indirect, it gives the reviewers a sense of maybe you don't really fully understand the market, because no technology exists without an indirect or direct competitors. And also you need to understand the regulatory environment that you have to operate in. What are the potential permits or approval that you need, or that anyone who wants to even deploy your technology in their site would need, for example. And very importantly, know the markets, know who you want to sell to, know who you have to be in partnership with, know where your from technology to feedstock, know where all of those are coming from. It's usually very helpful to provide a holistic view of your project and give the reviewers confidence that you're well knowledgeable about the space you plan to operate in. Number 3 is to plan your proposal. And when writing a proposal, it's very easy for us to just start typing and just fill out pages just to get to the maximum number of pages that is required. But it's also very helpful to identify the critical sections or the highly weighted section. And you address this first, because more often than not, the number of pages that you have might not be enough. And we've seen instances where people run out of space to address the proposal. So like at the start of the back, 10 pages or 40 pages might seem like a lot of numbers, but by the time you actually get into writing those proposals, you run out of space very easily. So it's very important that you identify the critical sections and address this first. And also, while you're writing your proposal, it helps to develop a narrative or a flow that your proposal would go through. How do you want to, what kind of story do you want to tell? Because proposal writing, as well as any other form of writing, is an art of storytelling. So how do you want to tell the story to help the evaluators have a strong image of what your project will achieve, how it wants to achieve it, and how this translates to better benefits for the province in the longer term. Number 4 is to balance the discussion of your project while communicating the big picture. in this, and what this point is really trying to drive home is that no technology exists in isolation. Your technology is just one bit or one piece of the bigger puzzle or the bigger picture. And so it's usually very helpful that you communicate what that big picture is in the space that you're planning to operate in. But however, I want to also put a caution in this part for this particular point, because a lot of time we see instances where in trying to communicate how your technology fits in that big picture, people sacrifice actually discussing their application and the uniqueness of their technology as well. And while we'll get on that point the next in the coming slide, I just want to highlight here that what is important here is for you to discuss the role that your technology or your project has in the overall development and commercialization of or the advancement of a particular session. And then coming down to the grants that you're writing for a given proposal, how does that fit in the long-term commercialization plan of your technology and the vision that you have for what you're proposing? And then also, how would this vision play in the long-term benefits then of the space you plan to operate in? But at the end of the day, the main caution here is don't spend too long discussing the big picture that you forget that actually providing a compelling story or narrative for your actual project is lost. So point number 5 is be clear, concise, and coherent. And this is very important because evaluators would almost always have scientific, engineering, and business background, but may not be core experts in your specific field. And so don't assume that they know how your process works and your benefits or even the abbreviations. You can use abbreviations and that's not frowned upon, but using abbreviations properly and as much as possible, try to limit the number of different abbreviations that you have in your proposal, especially if it is technology specific or especially if it's technology specific. And also very important is information should be easily accessible. A reviewer should be able to read your proposal and immediately digest it. It should be clear what you're trying to propose or what you're trying to say, and should also be straight to the point. As much as possible, avoid flowery language, and then there should be coherency in your line of thought, or how, which also this kind of goes back to point number 3 around how you're writing your narrative, creating a narrative. So there should be a flow and there should be a line of thought, and it should be clear enough that the reviewers are able to follow through. Point number 6 is to highlight the value of a solution. And so different technologies are targeting different problems. And more often than not, you find out as you are doing your market research that you're not the only one targeting a particular problem. And so it's very important in your grant proposal to highlight how your solution is better than others. And this ties back to the previous point about knowing your market. It's not expected that you would not be, it's not expected that you will not have competitors, but we want to know what is your selling point. What do you have to give or to have to offer that your other competitors do not have? It could be from a performance, it could be a performance metrics, it could be a cost metrics, or it could even be a land use or environmental metrics. So all of those things should be well articulated in your proposal. We want to, as much as possible, to know how you rank relative to other people who are trying out the same thing or similar things in your field. And so knowing the value proposition and competitive advantage of your solution relative to others is really helpful, and is more beneficial for you to say that outright than the opposite, which would be to not highlight that the presence of competitors in your market. Then the 7th point is to focus on one application or one market. More often than not, we see opportunities or we see solutions that can be spread out to different type of markets. And so proposal writers or applicants run the risk of wanting to showcase how versatile their project, how versatile their solution is, and how it can be adapted to different technologies to different markets. And so what that happens is it creates a very distorted image at the end of the day as to what exactly are you trying to drive out. Because more often than not, as an applicant or as an SME, you might not have the means necessary or available to go after all of these different markets at once. And so it's usually very helpful that in an application, you talk about the one market that you want to first of all address and how you will address it, the reason why you pick that market as your first point of entry, and the benefits and impact that your technology will have in that particular space. Where appropriate and where needed also, if you're trying to make any form of competitive analysis or environmental benefits or any type of claim, use that market as your basis. And then as a rounding up or closing, or to add a bit of overview to or high level information to your proposal, you can now touch on the other potential market and application, but that should be mostly to indicate versatility and potential future growth, not necessarily promising to deliver on all of the market at the same time. Then this is very important for the organizations that I represent, that's Alberta Innovates and Emissions Reduction Alberta, because we're very Alberta focused. And it's helpful to know the context, to have knowledge of the Alberta context. And so our funding programs are targeted to provide benefits to Alberta, be it economic or environmental benefits. And so ensure that you demonstrate your familiarity with Alberta. What are the local regulatory environments, the local market, and what do the different markets need, what are the needs of the various market participants? Provide a clear line of sight to future adoption and environmental benefits to Alberta. So this is very key, but then looking at it at a broader lens, if you're maybe looking at writing an application to a non-provincial agency, for example, like NRCan or other federal agencies, is usually nice. It's also helpful to then expand the lens into the Canadian context and highlight the specific market that you plan to work in. So if your technology is something that you want to develop in different provinces, then you should also highlight or demonstrate knowledge of those different provinces, as different provinces differ in how they operate. And then the next is to provide a compelling line of sight. And so reviewers don't just want to see a good proposal that is talking about the now. We want to see a proposal that is talking about the now, but also with a line of sight of what next and how are we working to achieve success, long-term success. Because projects are usually viewed as, one step along the path of commercialization of a technology. And so we want to see what the vision is for the technology, and not just provide, not to provide, we hope to achieve 40% of the market, or we hope to be the only technology to provide this service. Talk about tactical steps on how that vision would be achieved, because that would give the reviewers the confidence that you've actually put some time and effort into planning out your commercialization strategy, and also demonstrating knowledge of the market again. And so why that is also helpful is because we need to know that you understand the different challenges that you would potentially come up. We're all familiar with the term, the value of debt. So we need to know that you understand all of those things and that you have an idea of how you want to address all of those things, which would be helpful, because once we know the vision, we also want to know how this grant investment is helpful to getting your technology to the next stage. Don't just write an application because you can. Write the application and present your case to actually drive home the point that this fund is critical, or this fund is important to helping you achieve that long-term success. And number 10 is to speak about your entire process chain, your stakeholders, the partners that you've engaged. No one establishment exists in isolation. We all need one or more partners as we go along delivering our services. And so talking about those potential collaborations, the conversations that you've had, those are very helpful to indicate market pull and to indicate interest, that there are other external interest in what you're doing. And we also understand that why it might not be possible that you have all your contract agreements and all your partners lined up from maybe feedstock supplier down to a commercial offtake agreement. It's very helpful to know that, that you demonstrate that you've started thinking along that line, and you've started developing the appropriate connection that you need to actually achieve that broad commercialization and market adoption. So, because that also indicates a market pool for your technology, because at the end of the day, we want to help our technology, we want to fund things that would drive economic benefits within the province. And we also want to help things that fund things that are beneficial to the province. So knowing that people actually want what you're offering, or that there is a market that is already engaged and are eager for your product, just help boost that. And number 11 is to be honest and optimistically realistic. And so we run into a situation where being a technology inventor or being an innovator, we have high belief in our technology and in what we are offering. And so it's sometimes very tricky, because we tend to not be able to provide an objective overview of that technology, and that can present a risk, because then we feel, oh yes, we can solve all of the world's problem, but sometimes it rarely happens. And so it's helpful to be optimistically realistic and honest. Provide your best case scenarios. Provide your best your high level markets adoption rates, but at the same time explore other scenarios that could happen. Like, well, best case scenario is that you control your market, but if you don't control the market, what are the other possible outcomes, and how do you hope to survive and thrive in those other possible outcomes? Identify the gaps that you have currently, because if you do not have any gap, for example, you wouldn't be applying to a funding organization. So identify those gaps, be it financial, be it regulatory, be it technical, and also the risk and challenges that you might be facing, and also highlight plans on how to address those challenges. Because a lot of times we often see proposals with no risk mitigation table, and it's very unlikely that there will be no risk associated with your project. And so it's almost always preferable for you to be upfront and honest about the reality of your present situation, with sound plans on how to mitigate them, versus not putting them on the table or hiding them away, because more often than not, or most likely, the reviewers who are going to review your proposal are technical experts in that particular sector and are kind of familiar with the problems and challenges that your technology might face anyways. And so you putting it out there kind of does more good than harm to your proposal. And the last is to avoid marketing jargon. And this particular point is because of how the organizations AI and ERA operate. We are a we're a technology and research organization. And so it's very important that what you're presenting to us are things that can actually be validated, and that your performance claim, your marketing claim, and all of those matrices that you're providing to us, that there's a sound basis for that. We oftentimes hear how a solution is the best solution for a particular problem without necessarily seeing how that solution is the best solution. Like, we need to see those matrices that led to that discussion. More often than not, let your data lead the conversation. So show your data, and then by the time you present your data in a clear and concise manner, the reviewers are most likely to arrive at the same conclusion as you would arrive at. But presenting a conclusion or presenting claims without validation does not really help your case, and it then reads more like a marketing document rather than a technical document. And you really also do not want that. And so, as much as possible, try to avoid large general claims, and try to ground your claims in actual data and reality, and not just "we hope to" or very general comments like that. And last but not the least is, do not be afraid to reach out. More often than not, there is always someone who is willing, there's always someone available to jump on a quick call with you, or even send an email in response to your request. If there's something that you're not clear about around eligibility or criteria, it's very helpful for you to just reach out and try and get some clarity, because nothing wrong can come out of asking questions, actually, especially when it comes to writing applications and grants. So it's usually advisable to try and get clarity on points that you're not familiar with. Of course, a lot of organizations, ERA and AI, would typically provide FAQ documents alongside their guidelines and templates when we bring it out. And so those are questions that have been curated and responses have been provided, because over the course of our long years of operations, we've seen those questions come up time and over again. And that's why the answers have already been prepared well in advance of your of the application. And so the first thing to do, which was going back to point number 1 about reading the guidelines, templates, and other documents that was provided, is first and foremost go through the FAQs. Chances that the question that you have might already be there. And if it is a more application-specific question, then do not be afraid to reach out. There's always an email address as a contact or a contact information in the application document or the website where you're making the application. And those people are always available to help clear any doubts that you might have. And that's all I have for you today. I hope that was beneficial. So we'll dive into the next session now.
That's excellent. Thank you so much, Emanuela. That was a very, very good presentation. Probably the best presentation I've seen on helping people write grant applications. And I'm going to kick off with a couple of my own questions. And if anybody on the line has a question, please put it in the chat box, and we will we'll take a look at them and get around to answering as many as we can. You talked first from my perspective, I just want to reiterate a couple of things from the work we've been doing over the past 20 years. Starting early, I'm going to add to to what you were saying, Emanuela. Make sure you start early as you can. And I'd also recommend that you have one or more independent colleagues read through your application or read through your work before submitting, because it really helps to have, like what Emanuela is saying, is what's your narrative, what's your story, what's your value proposition? And sometimes you think you've explained it really well. But if you get somebody, especially if you get someone who's not like you, like somebody with a bit of a different personality, a different style of communication, to come in and generously read over what it is you're planning on submitting, and asking them, am I actually conveying this accurately? Can you see the value in what we're doing? Is it clear? how we fit into the market. So getting a couple of people, whether it's within your organization, ideally somebody outside of your organization, a partner that you work with, to read through it and to make sure you're communicating things. And then that I am guilty of the don't ask for help. So I encourage you to, even if it's like, I don't understand what you mean by this outcome or this metric, like, can you help us understand how to, you know, what that actually means, that output or that metric that you're looking for. And then, so I'm going to ask a question to you, Emmanuel, and it's around the competitors and the data. So when you're in an emerging or a nascent industry, like the decentralized energy industry or that space, how, you know, how can you address market growth potential data, you know, where those value chain participants aren't currently existing? What would be your advice if you're coming into, I don't know, artificial intelligence in energy systems or something where you know, how did you compare it to the traditional value chain? Is that your competitor, or what does your competitor look like when you're in a new industry?
Yeah, that's a good one, Anouk. So when you are in a new industry, or when you're when you're trying to push an emerging technology, you're correct. Like, some of the data that you need to make apples to apples comparison might not be there, and the reviewers understand that. So what you can do is to maybe provide, say, like you mentioned, artificial intelligence in energy. So if that type of market data is not available, but then there could be market data available for a somewhat separate or different kind of application of artificial intelligence, because at that point in time, what you're trying to get the proposal the reviewers to see is the value of artificial intelligence in itself, right? The industry could be health, it could be finance, you know. Definitely there are differences in this industry that will make it a bit unique, but in the absence of this particular industry, like if it worked here, how it works here, the principles and the core basics are typically the same, or the foundation are typically the same. What changes and what makes this different sectors unique are like the other layers that you build on the foundation. And so if like, I just want to use that same example that I used, like the artificial intelligence, talking about the artificial intelligence then in that situation is you know, helpful. And then also do not alienate the sector, because sector has specific challenges. And so speak to how this can look at it more of generalization. So it's not a problem that you see in the energy industry might have been seen in another industry. So it might just be, at the end of the day, a problem of data integration. And so speak to how AI was helpful in addressing the problem.
Yeah, exactly. So if it's not clear who your traditional competitors are, just how are you addressing the problem in the traditional sector that you're in the, you know, the way things have been done, the status quo sort of thing. Yeah, that's excellent. And data, you talked a lot about data and getting your information. So do you think is it more valuable to have market analytics coming directly from real or potential customers, or is it stronger to see data coming from credible third-party data sources like BDC or Bloomberg or other government sources, or is it a balance of both? Or
I'll say it's a balance of both. Definitely getting data from the actual people who would use the technology is very advantageous, because then they are telling you candidly, this is a problem that we need solutions for. This is where the gap exists, and you can help address that gap specifically. Sometimes, because other times, even in the other third-party data, there are a lot of data analysis and compilation and a lot of other matrices that have been probably that have gone into presenting that graph or that number that you see that you might not necessarily be privy to. And so having a balance of both, you know, when you present data from like the Bloomberg and the BDC, and also, substantiating or validating that with actual real data from the people who are actually going to use this product goes a long way.
Yeah, okay, excellent. And I guess a couple of, I'm not seeing any questions coming up in the chat box, but a couple of obvious ones. Where can we find the application portals and forms? Can we put something in the chat on some links where people can find links to Alberta Innovates and Emission Reduction Alberta application forms? And then when is a good time to apply? But just before you answer that, an important note is if you do have a decentralized energy project, an innovative project that you are looking to work with Alberta Innovates or ERA, DEC does have a relationship with Alberta Innovates where we pre-screen a shorter version of the EOI. So an even shorter than the EOI can be sent through DEC, and we will channel it through to our point of contact in the clean resources. This is not for vouchers or this is just for the clean resources funding program. So if you do have a project idea that you want to get pre-screened quickly, send it through to DEC and we will manage getting it in front of Alberta Innovates for further consideration you might actually skip the EOI and go straight to full proposal doing it that way. But just back to you, Emmanuel, are there some links on application portals and forms and when is a good time to apply? Because some of these are continual intake programs and some of them are limited windows. So
Yeah, definitely. So I'd say I'll speak first to the ERA's part. For ERA, we mostly do calls for proposals. So those have specific timelines. And really what I would advise potential applicants is to subscribe to the newsletter and or be very familiar with our website, because we typically will launch those calls, and when we launch on all of our platforms and maybe at some events. But really, if you subscribe to the newsletter, you would know when the applications are out, and then you would get the documents on our website, because where we launch the application, you almost always find the application documents there. Because it also goes back to your first point when you spoke about applying early, right? We've seen a lot of applications that we received the email of, oh, I just heard about this calls for proposal, and I have something that fits, that's a perfect fit for what you're looking for. But then it's just 3 days to come up with an application. And more often than not, those type of applications do not get to be successful, because it's just very difficult to come up with an application within 2 or 3 days, knowing that these are very competitive processes, and more often than not, we are usually oversubscribed. And so it's just really helpful to start early, like you said, and just visit the website, because those templates are usually on the website. And then if you can't find it, it goes back to my last point about reaching out. Like, there's always a contact information, and you can always send an email to the contact information, or even give a phone call, and someone would direct you to the appropriate place where you're supposed to be looking out for the templates. Then to the AI side, we do have a continuous intake stream through the Clean Resource group, like you mentioned. And so that also is just almost similar. The reason I distinguish them is because ARA does not really, we do not do a continuous intake. And so with the continuous intake for AI, you would also find templates and instructions on our website. And if probably you're unable to navigate through the website, or you're not seeing what you want, we can also always reach out and someone points you in the right direction. A lot of times, just even having a conversation with somebody to say, this is what I'm thinking, where's the right or more appropriate channel to send this in, is even helpful to avoid wasted effort, because it could as well be that, okay, maybe this is not well suited for this stage. Going back to the figure I put in about where each organization plays and the role that we play in, depending on what stage of innovation that you are at. It could be, oh, well, this is a sound opportunity, but maybe not for this stream. And then they would most likely always direct you to where the proposal would best fit, which would also give you a greater chance of success.
Yeah, and that's actually a really good, that's a really good point, Emanuela, because there is a bit of a one window, because especially with you being shared between AI and ERA, one window approach here. And there's like, and you can go onto the websites. Cara has put the Smart Simple login for Alberta Innovates. Cara Johnson's put that up there, and I've put in the ERA Alberta apply for funding link. And so there's a lot of opportunities within these two organizations. And as Emmanuel says, ERA is, it's very simple. You go to the website and you look at the programs and what calls have they got out right now, what's maybe coming down the pipeline. And on Alberta Innovates, it's even a bit more of a navigating task, because there's as small as, I think you still have as small as $25,000 in micro vouchers and $100,000. And then when you get to the clean resources, I mean, you can get up to $1 million of grant as a portion of a project. So there's a nice broad range of like early, we need support in market research, or we need help in a small pilot, and all the way up to a demonstration project. So Alberta Innovates has got a lot of, and they're different organizations too, so you have to navigate through that. So again, reaching out to Emmanuel as your point of contact, who's the best person to talk to within that organization. And Emissions Reduction Alberta are generally, you could get up to 7 or 10 million. Am I correct? Like,
it varies from program to program, but you could get up to like our average is around 5 to 7 million. And then in some cases, depending on the size of the call, we've allotted up to 15 million before.
Yeah. No, excellent. It's powerful. It's a powerful relationship between AI and ERA. Does anyone have, thank you, Susan. Does anybody have any other questions? We've gone through kind of like what types of money, how to apply, start early. I really can't emphasize it enough to get somebody else to read through, because it's helped me out a lot. And I'm like, I've written this down perfectly. Everyone understands what I'm saying. And then Crystal or Will will come in and say, I have no idea what you're talking about. Like, so you just getting that fresh pair of eyes, and then it speeds it up. The other thing I was going to ask is, so Prairies Can does something that's interesting. Do you do would you have a consultation session with a company, like a 20-minute one-on-one with them to discuss their concept, or does that depend on which program you're applying for?
So it depends on which program you're applying for. And so in the clean resources, Alberta Innovates clean resources, if you reach out to any one of us as to, okay, this is what I have, I'm thinking of this is what my technology is about. Is it possible to get a brief 20-30 minutes discussion in? You'd most likely, you more often than not have that. And so you have that initial conversation, and just so to be like, okay, yeah, this is what the kind of things we're looking out for, or where we are currently focused, and those type of things. So you can have that. But on ERA's end, usually because of how we operate, and we operate on a call-based model, we usually would see an overwhelming amount of applications pour in. In our just concluded industrial transformation call, we had upwards of 130 or 140. And so it's just, it's not very practical to give that one-on-one consultation to every applicant. And that's why we curated the FAQs. But if your question is not answered through the FAQs or in the guidelines or anything, you're also welcome to send an email inquiry. We'll reply the inquiry. And if it's something that requires someone having a call with you to discuss and clarify some point, then we are always open to that.
So another thing on top of that, that you just made me think of something, developing a relationship with the people within the organization is a way to also kind of help you out with that, isn't it? You know, if you've got someone who works in Alberta Innovates, that's your point of contact, not necessarily on funding, but if you develop, that's also a good piece of advice for when you are applying for grant money, is start developing that relationship as early as you can, whether you're applying now or not. Have the conversation. What types of things are you looking for? What types of partnerships? I think we could do a whole, so that's one piece of advice, is develop that relationships. If you've got Bob Ross as your, I've been calling him every week for the past 2.5 years, and he seems to understand our company. He knows what we're trying to achieve, and he might be able to help us with the language we need for an ERA application. So those sorts of relationships are very important. We could spend a whole webinar on, which I would love to do if you're up for it, Emmanuel, at some point, is do another webinar on budget, like accounting for costs. What is in kind? What is not in kind? What, can you leverage other government funds? If an NSERC grant is involved, what does this 4-to-1 stacking mean inside? And we could go through and actually probably come up with a pretty good presentation, because I think people get lost in that.
Yeah.
And I try and oversimplify things. It's like, well, that was the money we got, this is the money we need, and that's it. Yeah. But there's a whole bunch of other stuff out there about what are you doing in kind? Who's volunteering their time? Who's volunteering equipment? Who's bringing in some leveraging NSERC funding or, provincial funding, that sort of thing.
And that's a good point. Like the budget is another beast on its own. And yeah, definitely something that warrants its own topic. But just to maybe provide some level of comfort to the people in the room, we've seen applications where the budgeting is not as clear because, yeah, there are different buckets, stacking limits and whatnot. And it's very unlikely that a very strong proposal will be thrown out of running because of a terrible budget.
Okay.
Now, you definitely would need to work on the budgets and make it better. But should you have the other important criteria nailed down, so like you've properly articulated your value proposition, your technology, how it works and its competitive advantage. You've articulated your market and then your commercialization strategy. You've talked about the environmental and economic benefits. And you've also talked about, the project team and stakeholders. We talked like everyone in your partners and everything. If you've highlighted all of that, and then the budgeting is where it's a little bit unclear, that's understandable because we know that budgeting can be, it's a very tricky piece of the work. It's something that we definitely would want clarity on, but it's highly unlikely that a good application would be thrown out solely on the basis of budget.
Okay, that is comforting to know. Yeah, and so, but I still think it would be kind of cool to do a case study just to show, because I think the better that budget is when it goes in, the easier it is for you guys as well. And the other things like, what does revenue mean when you're trying to report on what kind of revenue this is going to bring to Alberta? I think there's so many different ways of interpreting what that means or how it looks. We could talk about do some examples, run through some case studies. We can talk offline about this, but Melanie seems to like it, so we should probably pursue it. Does anybody else have any questions or clarification points? Oh, there was a newsletter, Alberta Innovates newsletter. Cara, do you know the portal? Do you know not the portal, the URL for subscribing to that newsletter?
I will find it and I will put it in the chat.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I think does anybody else want to have any? What else can I think of? Watch this space. I think there's some exciting news coming down the line with the RA, some new programs coming up that are very exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, start early, get someone else to review your application, look for partnerships, customers. Who's your customer? I think, Emanuela, do you want any final comments?
Yeah, just a big thanks to everyone who took time out of their Friday morning to join the webinar. And, it shows maybe you're considering writing an application or writing a proposal, or you're actually writing one currently. And so I wish you all the best. And if there's anything, any major thing to take away from the webinar is to, just be clear in your writing, what you're proposing, how it wants to work, and its competitive advantage over others. And, talk about line of sight to your success and the partnership and engagement you've started with. And finally, always ask questions when you're not certain of, some aspects of your application or the guidelines or whatever.
And it's exciting times. I mean, we're like industry 4.0, 5.0, like the rapid transformation of industry. This is when all the innovators should be, feeling pretty good, because we need to adapt. We need to modernize our systems and our technology. There's a lot of opportunity out there. So it's exciting. Yeah. Thank you, Emanuela. Thank you, everyone. And reach out to, if you can't get a hold of AI or ERA for some reason, reach out to DEC. I did put a link to the website and an email address below. Let us know if you need anything. This has been recorded. We will talk to Emanuela and her team after, and when it's ready, we will share the recording with those who had registered for the webinar. And with that, I think
All right. Thank you, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day.
thank you. Have a great weekend.
Bye-bye.